Hi.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is the Anima Mundi part 11, The Naked Truth, Jung's Alchemical Descent into Hell, Michaela Villiers-Kendall for EA Zoom. It's the, what is the date? Oh, 4th of March. The 4th of March, 2021. Okay, great. Okay, so this is, as you can see in the illustration here. This is a picture, it's painted in 1896. It's a series of paintings by a French artist who did a series of paintings on truth. And the mythological symbolism of it is truth was trapped. So the goddess of truth is trapped at the bottom of a well. A well represents the abyss, the womb, the tomb, the source. So, and as we're going to be going back into the labyrinth, and we're still going to be using the shining because we're at a critical phase where we go into room 237 now. We're doing it through the lens of going into room 237, so that hopefully will be interesting. So anyway, so as you can see on the painting, her mouth is open in the mask of Dionysus, which is used throughout The Shining, the outrage and terror and the of evil, of horror, of the lack of truth in this case. And so she's outraged and she's coming out of the abyss. So we'll press on, as we'll go in if we dare. Right, so going through Jung's Red Book, which is his descent into hell through the Red Book. This is actually, I found out where that came from. I'll show you the book here. This illustration is from The Practice of Psychotherapy by Carl Jung. And that's his illustration from the book. And actually, as you know, obviously this is how this is one of the sources of the number for the room 237, because as you'd imagine with Kubrick, and as he's doing a fugue, as I've explained in other parts, there are several meanings, and he's doing that because that echoes the mythological reference of the Bible or the mythologies of Greece or Rome or any of the ancient stories. They all had more than one meaning. So he's really cleverly actually used the meaning of 237, and he's done other references to it, but I'll start. So you've got to start somewhere. And the interesting thing about it is that Kubrick has laid the way very carefully for you to have to solve parts of the puzzle before you can go on, like the labyrinth, like alchemy. And so you must take the steps. So he is leading you, in other words, through the maze, through the labyrinth. And as Jung was leading us through hell in the Red Book. Okay, so this is from the Practice of Psychotherapy, and it's actually, the illustration is on page 237, would you believe? So that's one of the first meanings. We had one last week when we entered the Red Book, and that was the Red Book itself, the page 237 was the descent into hell. But this is actually another page number which is referencing it. Page 236, actually, in the Practice of Psychotherapy, is the start of the chapter, The Naked Truth. So that's why The Naked Truth. Okay, so this is I won't go deeply into this right now because there's not a lot of time, but it's really interesting because as you can, it's the sun and the moon is the basis of alchemy. And I will say a little bit of what Jung says about it. He's talking about the shadow. He's talking about the assimilation of the shadow. And he says, just to quote him, "Today is no longer a question of how I get rid of my shadow, for we have seen enough of the curse of one-sidedness. Rather, we must ask ourselves, how can man live with his shadow without precipitating a succession of disasters? Recognition of the shadow, because that's the reason for going down into hell, the descent, is reason enough for humility, for genuine fear of the abysmal depths of man. This caution is most expedient, since the man without a shadow thinks himself harmless precisely because he is ignorant of his shadow. The man who recognizes his shadow knows very well that he is not harmless, for it brings the archaic psyche, the whole world of the archetypes, into direct contact with the conscious mind and saturates it with archaic influences. This naturally adds to the dangers of affinity, with its deceptive projections and its urge to assimilate the object in the terms of the projection, to draw into the family circle in order to actualize the hidden incest situation, which seems all the more attractive and fascinating the less it is understood. The advantage of the situation, despite all its dangers, is that once the naked truth has been revealed, the discussion can get down to essentials. Ego and shadow are no longer divided, but are brought together in an admittedly precarious unity. This is a great step forward, but at the same time, it shows up the differentness of one's partner all the more clearly. And the unconscious usually tries to close the gap by increasing the attraction. And he's talking about the animus and anima there, as the archetypes that have to be brought to light in order to realize the shadow. All this is borne out by the alchemical idea that the fire which maintains the process must be temperate to begin with and must then be gradually raised to the highest intensity. So, okay, so we'll press on to the next one. Okay, so this is the Bollinger, hold on, it's the Bollinger stone at Jung's house. And there that is alchemical. I mean, you can see there's a child in the middle, and this is what is actually carved on the stone. He says, "Time is a child, playing like a child, playing a board game, the kingdom of the child. This is Telephosphorus, who roams through the dark regions of this cosmos and glows like a star out of the depths. He points the way to the gates of the sun and to the land of dreams." And round there, you can see there's this sun and Jupiter on one side, then there's Venus and the moon on the other. Below there's Mars, it's a bit hard to see there, and above the Saturn. And in the middle, there's Mercury on the child. So, okay, go on then. And that obviously pertains also to Kubrick's, with Danny, that the scene before he goes into room 237, Danny is playing in a circle, in a mandala, in a hexagon, and that is also referring to that stone carving. Okay, right. So this is when the Red Book was actually. I thought this would be interesting to show because it's when the Red Book was removed from the safe in 2007. After all those years, a long time. I mean, Jung died in 1961. So it was finally removed from the safe with a view to publishing. And this is the date that it was removed and the time. So really interestingly, Chiron is ascending in Aquarius, conjunct Neptune. But what's particularly interesting here, we don't have a chance to go into the whole chart, but is the moon obviously at 0 degrees Cancer. But more than that, it's that Mercury right up there in the 9th house, the house of dissemination and the spreading of knowledge, in higher knowledge, and it's conjunct Lilith. In fact, Lilith, the black moon Lilith, was passing over Mercury the day before in Scorpio. So it's very much the psychopomp bringing the information from hell, sort of thing. So yeah, it's a fascinating chart if you go into it. Right, and obviously square to that ascendant and everything. Right, so here's another in the series of that painting, Truth Comes Out of the Well. That is obviously when truth is still down in the well or the abyss, and interestingly holding a mirror. The mirror and the light is often, and you see there's the spilt water, the spilt pail there, which is an Aquarian symbol. And she's holding up the mirror to the light to catch the sunlight, but the mirror is an alchemical symbol, and one that Jung obviously used to represent, to see the self, to see the shadow, it's represented in mythology way back, and that's where he, and alchemy, Hermeticism and Gnosticism. So anyway, so that's that painting. So we'll just go on because we haven't got much time to dwell on that. Okay, I wanted to include this, although I included it in the last part, and it's because it's fabulous. It's from 2001: A Space Odyssey, but it's on the monitor. And that actually is the monitor of the shuttle above the moon, and the astronaut is looking at the monitor, and that represents the red book. See the red square, and that's actually the moon mission they're looking at below. So all those lights are their lights and astronauts and things down there with their moon mission and their monolith, but it's in the shape of a key. So obviously this is, representing the key, which Jung talked about in the Red Book, about when he said Philemon appeared with holding a key, which was one of his guides, and in his descent into hell in the Red Book. Okay, so the key to room 237, which is going into hell, which is the descent into the abyss, into death. Right, so we'll press on there. Okay, so just to explain, so this is, again, I have to bring this up a lot because the maze is based on the Cabala, it's based on the tree of life and the tree of death, the Klippos. So not to go into all of this, but it's necessary just to show it that before Danny goes into room 237, or shown going into room 237, he is in Yesod, which is the number 9 Sephiroth, down below in the purple one. And that's the Sephiroth of the moon. And so it's purple, and then this is where it comes in, because he is going in now to another Sephiroth. He's going through Dath. He opens the door, which is Daleth, into Dath, which is the 11th Sephiroth, which doesn't really, it's up there. You can see the High Priestess rules over Dath, and Pluto reigns over it as the planet. They all have planets. And the High Priestess is the High Priestess of the moon, which we went into last time. The second tarot card. So Kubrick is also using the tarot cards, and he begins with number 2, the High Priestess of the moon, Yesod, which is the 9th Sephiroth, and to go into Dath. So as Danny goes in, or we see Danny go in, it's complicated, so I'll try to simplify it. He goes in, and there's a carpet in room 237, which is the first thing you see. And the carpet is a very strange looking carpet, but it is purple and green. As you can see, Netzach is green. That's ruled by Venus, and it's the seventh Sephiroth. So he is actually going from the moon on that path, the star, into Netzach, which is why the carpet, as we'll see next, probably should go on to the next one there. The carpet, oh no, okay, I've done this first, but we'll get to the carpet. The Empress, why I've done that is because the Empress is number 3. If we go back to the tarot, just a second. The Empress is the 3rd tarot card. And so that's 2 is the High Priestess, 3 is the Empress. And the Empress is representing the mother, the great mother. I mean, many of you will know about the tarot and the represent, so that's it's a good thing just to say very quickly. I've marked where it is, hold on, yeah, the Empress. So it says here, and this is very good, I've shown this before, the Tarot of Awakening, which is very good, by Amy M. Wall. And it talks about the Cabala. It's to do with the Cabala. So I am the door of life, the passage from the world of ideas into the world of form. Expressing myself, I take form in substance, but the power which worketh in that substance is the sovereign force of mine outflowing ideas. She is the great mother, and the door is Daleth, as I was saying, meaning the door by linking Hokmah, male force, and Bina, female womb. The Empress serves as the door through which creation emerges. And I could go on with that, but actually it's, I haven't got time, but it's really interesting if you get the book, what she says here about it. Okay, she's saying about a denial of the Empress, and I will just say that. The denial of the Empress is mirrored in our culture's long-held beliefs that humankind is superior to the earth and male is superior to female. Ecological consciousness and deep ecology are in sharp contrast with the dominant worldview of technocratic industrial societies, which regards humans as isolated and fundamentally separate from nature, as superior to and in charge of the rest of creation. And that's a central theme, as you know, if you've seen The Shining, you'll know that it's a central theme. It's a central theme in evolutionary astrology because Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about the natural order. And it's what we've become disconnected from. And that's what Jung was saying too. And seeking a way through going down into the depths, into death, into hell, to reclaim where we've gone wrong on that. But the Empress, so the great mother. So quickly going on. Number 3, so we had 2, High Priestess, 3, the Empress. So anyway, so yeah, so that was Sophia, just looking quickly at that one. That's Sophia with the dove behind her, but she's holding the Grail. So Sophia holds the Grail. The Grail represents the womb, the source of creation, the womb again. So the void and the abyss and the womb, they're the same thing really, and the tomb. So that is the great mother, and that is the beneficent great mother. I will say something about her because it's very interesting. I've got it here, which I might not. Oh yeah, okay. So Jung says about Sophia, and he says the eternal feminine. He says Sophia cannot be brought together with Eve, since Eve has nothing to do with magic, because Sophia does. But she probably can with Adam's first wife, Lilith. And this is the first mention of Lilith, who figures very strongly in Jung's Descent to Hell and to Kubrick's depiction of it. So the eternal feminine is Faust. In Faust is the Sapienta Dei, who is the same Sophia. This is what Jung is saying. It cannot be doubted that since such figures always have a shadow, Sophia has one too. This shadow would be a perversion of the divine into the dark and magical. Naturally, this is the witch or the arch-sorceress Hecate, who, 3-headed and 3-bodied, represents the lower equivalent of the Trinity, psychologically the lower function triad. So that he's saying that Lilith, and actually Hecate is the same, it's Hecate, Lilith, they're all the same figure, really. Okay, so he's saying that she is the lighter side of the same archetype and Hecate, Lilith, is the darker, the shadow, in other words. So anyway, so we see Danny supposedly going into room 237. And as he goes in, actually, I was going to mention that he does say, Mom, are you there, Mom? Obviously talking about the great mother, and Lilith, which is also the mother, the dark side, the dark archetype, the shadow. So there's Halloran. There's a Halloran's feet. So this is the next shot. He's watching TV in his apartment in Miami. And he's looking at the TV, and they have images, and the images on the TV, and I'll show just one, I think, of them, because we can't go through all of them, but the most important one. Above the TV is a picture of a semi-nude girl. Now you wonder why. Obviously, it tells you straight away that Halloran is living alone. He doesn't have a wife, otherwise he wouldn't have semi-nude women on his wall. So she is, and also there is blue on the screen of the TV. So you're getting the sense that this is the blue side, as opposed to the opposition, which we'll show next, is the red side. So you have blue and red, and we've been through that, blue and red are the hemispheres of the brain, and the left and right side, and intuition and logic, etc. So you have the lamps, the two lamps, and so and I'll go into the more of the meaning of that in a moment. The interesting thing about the girl, though, it looks like a halo. Her afro looks like a halo, but she is a depiction of Lilith. And I'll just say just a quick thing about that. Because he has two pictures. So on the opposite side of the bed head, which, as I say, is red, he has a red picture of the girl with a smaller afro, but it looks like the same girl. And they seem like two sides of Lilith. And like we were saying, one is the shadow side, and one is the and one is the positive side. Okay, Lilith, it says here. And this is a very good book too, The Book of Lilith by Barbara Black-Koltov. Right, so it says, Lilith is the part of the great goddess that has been rejected and cast out in post-biblical times. She represents the qualities of the feminine self that the Shekinah alone does not carry. So the Shekinah is the positive side of Lilith. The first of these qualities is lunar consciousness, which is a connection to the cycles of waxing and waning, life and death, and rebirth. And the goddess is as maiden, mother, and crone. Lilith the younger is Neymar, the maiden and seductress. Lilith the ancient one is child killer, hag, and snatcher. While Lilith herself is the mother of the mixed multitude, the goddess of life and death, the flame of the revolving sword. When we get further, and we're not going to get all the way into room 237 because we won't have time, but hopefully in the next part we can do that. And so Lilith the younger and Lilith the ancient one is depicted more in that scene as it goes on. This is an introduction to Lilith as Lilith and the Shekinah, which is the positive, and so and the black moon Lilith. So really this Lilith here represents the black moon Lilith. Okay, so we'll go on. So that shows, so it's showing really Halloran. His feet depict Malkut at the bottom of that doesn't show very well, it's a bit blurry, but you'll see on the next, you can see on the one we showed before, the colored one. But Malkut is the 10th Sephiroth, and it represents earth, it represents the kingdom, and the feet corresponding on the man, up to the head, up to the crown. The tree of life corresponds to each part of the body, and the chakras and all of that. So so we'll go to the next one, and then you'll see that, I think. Okay, so this is the tree of life, and then it shows the reflection, the tree of death, which is what Kubrick is depicting. Now we go through death into the abyss, which is the tree of death, and the tree of death reflects the tree of life, and that's where the demons live. And Lilith, as you can see down there, it is a bit hard to see, but she actually resides in the corresponding 9th Sephiroth of Yesod, the moon. So that's where the black moon, you would suppose, comes from. The hanged man next to it is Halloran's position in this, really. He is the hanged man, he is in suspension, and his feet are pointing, his head is, in this depiction, is towards Malkut, but it's the tree of death. It's complicated, but hopefully it'll become clear as we go on. Halloran, by the way, and this will become clear too, is earlier on, in earlier parts, he was seen to be Sandalphon, which is the angel Sandalphon descending, as he descended into the gold room when he met up with everyone on the first day, and as Sandalphon down the ladder. He didn't come down the ladder, but he came from under the ladder, which signified him entering as Sandalphon. Sandalphon is Elijah, the prophet, and he was made Sandalphon in the mythology when he died. So anyway, but he's back. He's back as Halloran, and so here, this now you understand too the connection, because Elijah was connected to Lilith in the mythology. And also he is the prophet Elijah, and also he is connected to Jung's descent into hell because he was his guide in hell, and he met up with Salome, who is another Lilith figure. Right, press on. So that's on the screen as Halloran is watching, is the tower of the TV station, but there's a 10, so that represents Malkut, which is the kingdom. And also there's a 0, you can see at the back, it's just a 0, which is, we talked about that's the 0 in the choking poster, which we'll look at again. And that's also the 0 that is very symbolic. I won't go into it now because I did in the last part. Anyway, so 10 is Malkut, that is the tower. So, and there are dark clouds around it. And I think we've got the tower next, in the next shot, in the next slide. Yeah, so it represents the falling tower. And you'll know all about that if you know about the tarot. So also it's 16, so it's 16 reduces to 7. So you get your last 7 there. You get room 2, 3, 7 is the tower, is the last one. Also the chariot, which I haven't included, and the chariot is pulled, so to speak, by the sphinxes, and the sphinxes also represent Lilith. Okay, so this is, you see there's one falling is in blue, and one is in blue and mostly red, a red cloak. And obviously this is the falling tower. We'll say something about that because in this book, because it's interesting. It is what has to break down. It is verily destruction is the foundation of existence, and the tearing down thou seest is but the assembling of material for a grander structure. So we erect towers. It's towers. It says we erect towers in our lives. They are stories in our lives. They're so very fascinating that we spend a good deal of time building them, tall and strong. They are our towers. Unfortunately, these towers prevent us from discovering who we are beneath the structure of our stories. For us to progress, our towers must be destroyed. Sometimes this destruction is the work of a lifetime. Other times it occurs from just a single glimpse of truth. In terms of consciousness, the lightning flash symbolizes a sudden momentary glimpse of truth, a flash of inspiration which breaks down structures of ignorance and false reasoning. And that's what Halloran starts to get. He starts to get a vision, and the vision is being it's being shone, as he's talked about the shining. It's being shown to him telepathically from Danny. So we'll see that, and I think it's the next shot. Could be. Okay, so there he is. It shows him at the bed head. And there is the red picture of Lilith, the other side of Lilith. And you've also got the lights of the lamp are representing birds and angels. I won't go deeply into that now, but that's really interesting too. So they are birds descending or angels descending. He's wearing blue. So he's representing the logical side of the mind right now. And he's on green, which is the color of Netzach, as we just said, of Venus, of the 7th Sephiroth, which is where Danny, in his vision, is just entering. So he's going to get that vision supposedly from Danny. You do see Jack, then Danny seems to turn into Jack. We won't get that far, as I said, but I will say that it's pretty obvious that Jack is actually never involved. It's just that Danny is metamorphosizing into Jack for the purpose of the vision, because it's Jack who is the antagonist. And so it's Halloran, really it's Halloran's vision, most of it, projected by Danny. Okay, so we'll go on to the next. So there he's getting the vision, the open mouth again, the mouth of the mask. Pei, the tower actually is on the path of Pi or Pei, which is the mouth. It means the mouth. So, okay, so he's seeing the vision now, and Danny is projecting it to him, which I think is the next slide. Yeah, so he's in red. And so he's having what looks like a fit. The mythology with Lilith is that she gives children fits and she strangles children. And that's how you come to that's one of the clues that this is about Lilith, one of the many clues. It's the main clue. So Danny is having this vision, but I would say that it's actually, Danny is actually not in command here. His daemon is in command, which is Tony. So it's Tony really who's taken over even at this point and is actually projecting the vision to Halloran. So we'll go on to the next. I think that's so that's the poster. So there you can see, and I showed it last time, the choking poster, which shows the child in the middle wearing red, screaming with the open mouth and choking. There are some pictures too. That's in the boiler room, and that's Wendy's ponytail in the foreground. So there are some pictures of sort of semi, not pornographic, but sort of semi-pornographic pictures. So you wonder what all that's about, but it's because it's Lilith, because Lilith has this reputation of being evil projected onto her. Obviously, she's carrying that projection. Okay, so we'll go on then. So it shows us Lilith. So this is Lilith, who is the succubus, who comes to men who sleep alone. There is Halloran sleeping alone. And she comes to him at night. That's the myth of it. So that's what it is. So we'll go on to the next slide. So this takes them into the clip-off, and there you can see it better there. You can see Lilith at the site of the moon, the black moon in this case, and there are the demons. And so they have entered the realm of the clip-off now, in the story. So, okay, quickly go on. So this is Lilith. So this is Lilith in the Garden of Eden, obviously a depiction. And you can see now, you notice that the painter, they are all very well aware. These are romantic artists, but even painters before then, you can see that they're aware of the mythology. And so that picture of Sophia, you can see, the Grail it's called, which is Sophia holding the Grail. You can see very much that it's the same, it could be the same woman with the long red hair. And this is her Lilith side. So I just want to mention this book, which is, and it's very good. It's called Masculine Shame by Mary Y. Ayers, and it's From Succubus to Eternal Feminine. And I'd really recommend reading that, because it describes it describes what Jung was saying and what Kubrick was saying, and how shame, and I'll just try and read a little bit of it. Shame is what's being projected onto this figure of well, onto women, onto the great mother, onto the feminine, onto the eternal feminine. And it says here, hold on, I'll just find the best bit because I don't have time to do all of it. Yeah, hold on. So deep in the heart of man's matricidal impulses lurks a devil, a malevolent core possessed by the child-killing succubus, the shadow of a man's identification with omnipotence in defense against the shame of dependence. And when it says masculine shame, it's not specifically, we've said this before, talking about men, it's talking about the masculine principle, which obviously does seep into into the male in mankind and the female, the female in humankind as well. But it's the masculine principle. It's not specifically men. All right, just read one other thing about that because it's very good. Lilith and transcendence, it says. When masculine shame is re-envisioned, Lilith, even in her embodiment as death and destruction, becomes beneficent and releases a man from the definitions of his ego. Lilith becomes a cosmological principle of manifestation working for a subtler, higher purpose. The succubus is not only a repository of shame, for shame, but of the forgotten true self as well. Facing her brings a man into the fullness of his creative life, or a woman. This, in effect, is the resolution to the myth of Adam and Lilith. Just as with Lilith's encounters with Elijah, all Lilith requires to withdraw her evil powers is recognition. In other words, the resolution for the battle between the sexes is quite the opposite of fighting. It takes destruction of the other, the absence of self, and therefore recognition. When a man faces his shame, when he becomes nothing, he discovers the chthonic, spiritual aspects of Lilith. This means that submission is not simply a willing towards death, but rather a willingness towards eternal life, with Lilith as midwife to rebirth. To grow conscious of one's shadow is to develop a capacity to endure, prevail, live, and create. The demonic becomes daemonic. Right, okay. So the last one. And there is shame when she's shame, Lilith, truth, truth escaping the well. But this is an interesting painting, not by the same artist, by another French artist. But she's got the mirror and she's escaped. And you can see those two men trying to grab hold of her. I haven't looked into the history of the painting yet, but it's interesting because he's wearing a blindfold, one of the men. And so they don't want truth to escape. So wonderful stuff. And that brings that to an end for now.